All right, I have started the recording. Just a reminder to want to read this disclosure here real quick at the bottom. That this meeting is being recorded. By joining and participating in this session, consent is being given to the recording. Please keep cameras off per NOAA Privacy Act statement. All right, so welcome to the fire weather briefing for June 30th. Got myself, Jeremy in Spokane, and Harrison over in Seattle. And looking at the fire weather summary for this week, I'll start with Eastern Washington and North Idaho and then pass it over to Seattle to talk about their side. So we've got some elevated conditions the next couple of days. For today, we really don't have anything else other than just the warm and dry conditions. We don't have the instability or wind to go with it. So it's a marginally elevated day, but given that we have heat advisories out with those very warm temperatures, did indicate today is elevated. We increase it up a notch tomorrow. It's definitely elevated on Tuesday as we add the unstable component, and also it'll be a little bit hotter. So we'll have hot and dry and unstable conditions for Tuesday for Eastern Washington and North Idaho. Then as we go into Wednesday, we increase it yet another notch across Eastern Washington for critical conditions, for dry and windy conditions, and we also had the potential for some isolated thunderstorms. Over in North Idaho, we'll also see that potential for isolated thunderstorms, but it's not going to be as windy over North Idaho still, so another elevated day over there. Then as we go into Thursday, we'll have dry and breezy conditions across Eastern Washington for another elevated day. But as we get into Friday, which is Independence Day, we have low fire weather concerns, which is good news, and that continues into the weekend. All right, I'll pass over to Harrison to talk about the west side.
Thanks, Jeremy. Yep, we're definitely have the same concerns with the warm and dry Monday and Tuesday in Western Washington. We're getting our warmest air today with highs reaching the mid-upper 80s and a couple Cascade Valley areas reaching the low 90s. So it's mostly just a low relative humidity concern with a couple of these spots dipping into the mid-20s percent for the relative humidities. And then once we get into Wednesday, the high pressure kind of moves out and we start to get a little bit more moist with the relative humidity recoveries in the morning. So the concern drops off after that. Back to you, Jeremy.
All right, thank you. All right, moving on. This is the graphic for Wednesday PM showing the area of highest concern for the critical fire weather conditions. It includes the Columbia Basin, the Kittitas and Yakima Valleys, as well as the Moses Lake area, the Waterville Plateau, the Wenatchee and Chelan areas up through the Okanagan Valley. For the Okanagan Valley, it's going to be mostly southerly winds channeling up the valley. So that's the one exception to this graphic. For most of the region, it's going to be the westerly winds. And for central Washington, we're looking at sustained winds out of the west, 15 to 25 with gusts as high as 30 to 40 miles per hour. And across the yellow elevated area for eastern Washington, as well as the Methow Valley, we're looking at sustained winds in the 10 to 20 mile per hour range, gusts 25 to 30. Minimum relative humidities will be getting down to 13 to 20%, and it's going to be very warm with high temperatures in the upper 80s to mid 90s. The period of most concern is 2 p.m. to 8 p.m. And in addition to all that, there is a slight chance for some dry lightning Wednesday morning. So if we do get any, if that does happen and we get any dry lightning, the critical conditions following that lightning could result in fire spread with any new starts should we get any dry lightning Wednesday morning. All right, and just looking at the current satellite image, there is this low off the Oregon or off the California coast, off the central California coast. And that is expected to develop some thunderstorm activity well to our south for the next few days, but it's some of that moisture that may get drawn up into the region Wednesday morning as this trough begins to approach from the west. So that's what's going on with the weather pattern over the next few days. So just wanted to hit on that. All right, so that concludes the slide portion. I'm going to go through the rest of our fire weather dashboard here, starting with the hazards. And it shows where there's currently a heat advisory out across much of eastern Washington and portions of North Idaho. And that runs through 9 p.m. Tuesday. And then looking at the weather conditions, I just wanted to hit on the temperatures for the next couple days. Here's our high temperatures for today. And then as we go into tomorrow, we bump it up even more with some triple-digit temperatures across some of the warmest locations. And then as we go into Wednesday, those temperatures drop off just a little bit, but as with any weather change, there usually comes a little bit of wind to go with it, which I'll show here in just a minute. This is the minimum relative humidities for Wednesday, showing those dry conditions. And then here's the forecast winds. On the left is the sustained at 2 p.m. and on the right is the peak wind gust forecast from 11 a.m. through 11 p.m. And some of these winds over central Washington, these look fairly close to what we're expecting. Over eastern Washington, wouldn't be surprised if these gusts are a bit stronger, which is why for that graphical depiction, I was talking about gusts in the 25 to 30 range. So some of these may be underdone, and we'll take a closer look at those with the afternoon package. And then the last thing I wanted to hit here is the probability for thunderstorms on Wednesday. This is being generated from the national blend of models. So it's showing very low chances for lightning on Wednesday. But I will show you another thing towards the end of the briefing. Actually, I could go ahead and just switch to that right now since we're talking about the lightnings, and then we'll come back to this. So this is just one model showing where the potential convection will be for the next few days. So here's today, Monday, with those storms potentially firing over southern Oregon, northern California, so well to the south. As we go into Tuesday afternoon, those storms get a little further north across central and northeast Oregon, but still not impacting Washington. But then as we get into Wednesday, we see the potential for not strong convection, but some higher base thunderstorm activity across the Columbia Basin and into northeast Washington Wednesday morning, and then those moving into the northern panhandle for Wednesday afternoon. Again, this stuff looks pretty weak. We may not get any lightning out of it. It may just be some high-based showers that produce just some light rain at the ground, but it is something we'll be taking a closer look at for the afternoon package. All right, going back to our main dashboard, here's the QPF forecast for the next 7 days. It's looking fairly dry. Again, there could be some light precipitation on Wednesday, but it'd be pretty spotty if we do see any across those areas that I was just showing. And now we'll go to the trends, and we'll start with the west side, and I'll pass it over to Seattle to talk about Ore Creek there.
Thanks, Jeremy. Yeah, so Ore Creek and kind of the Cascades is where we're looking at some of the lowest RH values going into today with those warmer temperatures. You'll notice that the recovery is modest for at least the next couple days with warmer and drier air. We start to get the marine air coming around Wednesday. It might take a little bit longer to reach the Cascades going into Wednesday, but by Thursday, those recoveries are reaching 90, 80, upper 80s and 90% through the week. And we kind of expect it to remain that way going through the 4th of July weekend. We don't really have any shower chances. It's just the marine pushes bringing in some marine air each of those mornings. Back to you, Jeremy.
All right, thank you. All right, for Eastern Washington, we'll look at the Douglas RAWs here on the Waterville Plateau, which is expected to be one of the windier spots. And you can see those winds picking up Wednesday into Thursday. And then, those relative humidities will be very low both days, getting down into the 10 to 15% range. And then the winds gradually decrease as we head into the 4th of July weekend, but remaining warm. We see those temperatures drop off from the mid 90s there on Tuesday to the upper 80s on Wednesday, and then getting down into the low to mid 80s on Thursday and Independence Day. And then it looks like potentially a gradual warm up as we head into the weekend. And then we will move on over to North Idaho and look at McGee Peak. And the thing I wanted to highlight here is and this applies for the whole region, any of the mid slopes and ridge tops are going to have poor humidity recoveries at night this week, as we have a dry air mass that lingers, only recovering to the 45 to 55% range for much of the week. So that is another thing to highlight, that our fuels will be continuing to dry out. All right, moving on to the 8 to 14-day outlook. It is favoring, as we go into next week, increased odds for above normal temperatures, with slightly increased odds for wetter than normal conditions. But for early to mid-July, we don't get much precipitation anyway, so I wouldn't put much faith in there being much in the way of precipitation. All right, so with that, just a reminder that our fire briefing, as well as a lot of information, is on our dashboard. And with that, I will stop recording